people's car rolls out in Germany, and the GI brides set out for the States. With hundreds of thousands of American troops passing through Britain on their way to the war in Europe, it's to be expected that many of them would meet local English girls, fall in love, and get married. Well, after the end of the war, the men went back home while the women and children waited. In 1946, the first of the GI bride ships sets off.
At last, the GI brides are on their way, off to new homes in many parts of the States. Here are some of the first to set out on their long and exciting journey. A few of the 600 out of a total of some 50,000, on their way to the transit camp at Tidworth. It's reported that about half a dozen failed to turn up. They missed the bus. A number of German prisoners had been allotted the task of fetching and carrying. Whatever the GI brides may be going to, and America has its difficulties like us, these two, at any rate, can expect a better climate. Presumably, though they don't know it now, the hundreds of children will grow up pretty nearly 100% American.
The arrival of the Argentina, the first GI bride ship, was a big occasion on the other side of the Atlantic, and excitement must have been intense as the liner approached New York. There were 458 brides and 175 babies. And, well, you know what babies are, I expect. Anyway, for all these wives and mothers and children, it was a great moment, the arrival in New York. After a long separation, after patient and impatient waiting, it was a dream come true at last. Let's hope a future as happy as this reunion lies ahead of them all.
And of course, there was a happy future for many of them. But you know, some of those girls, having nothing but the movies to go on, expected swimming pools, big fancy cars and everything else. When they found that they were living in a one-roomed tenement, they came home on the next boat back. But what of Germany in 1946, now occupied by the victorious Allies and struggling to rebuild her shattered economy? Well, one of the first industries to be reconstructed is now turning out the Volkswagen, Hitler's people's car, designed by Ferdinand Porsche before the war. Now it's being made for the occupiers of Germany.
A German factory is taken over for British military production. This was the huge plant erected at Hitler's order for the construction of the German people's car. Only, of course, the vehicles never came off the assembly lines as cars until now. Now they're being turned out by the factory at the rate of 600 a month and turned over to the British military government. It's a handy little job, the Volkswagen. Good springing, takes a gradient nicely, carries its engine at the back. German prisoners of war drive these cars for officers of the British military government and the Allied Control Commission. At HQ British military government in Germany, there are large numbers of the people's car in service with the master race as taxi drivers.
And now to India, and there's the shock news of the death of Mahatma Gandhi, the man who preached and practiced non-violent civil disobedience in his campaign for independence from Britain, is shot 3 times by an assassin.
The whole world was shocked by the news of Gandhi's assassination. Known as the father of India's independence, Gandhi, with perhaps the largest following any man ever had in his own lifetime, was one of the most vital figures of our age. Among the latest pictures of the Mahatma are these showing him with Lord and Lady Mountbatten in the course of discussions on India's future. It was later that, in order to put an end to the terrible communal violence that had broken out, Gandhi undertook his recent fast. This was in his residence, Birla House, and it was here that he died after being shot during his prayer meeting nearby. Gandhi, whose death must have incalculable results, was 78.
The last British troops left India shortly afterwards, and the country became a republic in 1949. The British Empire is beginning to break up, and the world powers are now America and the Soviet Union. As we move into the 50s, we see America caught in the grip of Cold War fever. Spies, conspiracies, and communists are thought to be everywhere, undermining democracy and working a way to turn the American dream into a nightmare. Hollywood stars lose their jobs because years earlier they'd helped refugees from Nazi tyranny. Teachers have to swear an oath of loyalty. Books are burned. The verdict on all of this nowadays is that the witch hunters themselves created the fantasy. But alongside the anti-red hysteria comes a massive build-up in nuclear armaments and the means of delivering them to enemy targets. The most important vehicle is the nuclear submarine.
When the world's first atomic-powered submarine, the Nautilus, went out on her trials, the question of her first dive was a $50 million question, for that's what she cost. She was on a 1,000-mile cruise, but her first submersion was the highlight, of course, and this is it. Everything apparently went exactly according to plan. It was indeed a notable event in naval history. Nautilus was due to make 50 such dives before returning to dry dock.
By the 60s, there were enough nuclear weapons on either side to achieve the state of mutually assured destruction, MAD, or MAD for short. And it's to the 60s that we now go. We'll see the inside of the new school for Prince Charles, the state funeral of Winston Churchill, and a win for Erik Karlsson in the Monte Carlo rally. One of the great events in motor racing is the annual Monte Carlo rally. It began in 1911 as a tourist attraction to bring visitors to the Principality of Monaco in the winter months. Well, competitors began the rally from different European countries, eventually converging on the steep roads of Monte Carlo itself. Here's the race in 1962.
Competitors in this year's Monte Carlo rally may have had an easier drive than some years, but it's inevitably a grueling affair. Here's a flash from the final phase. Sunbeam Rapiers were 3rd, 4th, 10th and 12th. They won the team award. Britain had the biggest number of entries, and even if they didn't win it outright, they did very well. Pat Moss and Anne Wisdom in a Mini won the Ladies' Cup. Driving a Mercedes-Benz, Boehringer and Lang of Germany were runners-up to the rally winner, Erik Karlsson, Sweden, in a Saab. Karlsson makes a habit of winning. Congratulations.
In 1961, Queen Elizabeth and Prince Philip are on tour in India, escaping the British winter, lucky them. So let's join them as they see one of the most beautiful buildings in the world, the Taj Mahal.
The Queen arrives at Agra, about 120 miles from Delhi. And no doubt she experienced all the excited anticipation which everyone must who comes for the first time to this place. To Agra, city of the Taj, a poem in marble as it's been described, in words which can never fully convey the breathtaking perfection of this most sublime of buildings. Built over 300 years ago by Shah Jahan to commemorate his beautiful wife, Mumtaz Mahal, it's the most perfect symbol of a man's love for a woman. When the somewhat somber weather gave way to sunshine, the Queen was better able to admire the subtle textures of the marble and the graceful geometry of the gardens. An experience later to be heightened when she achieved the ambition of every visitor and saw the Taj Mahal by moonlight.
Well, a year later, and the royals' eldest son, Prince Charles, is ready to go off to a new school. It's been decided that he'll go to Gordonston, the toughening up academy which his father went to when he was a boy.
Like his father, the Prince of Wales, as a small boy, went to school at Cheam. The heir to the throne took part in the same outdoor activities as the other boys. He's seen here enjoying some of them at the age of 8. Strenuous, but good fun. Not holding that bat correctly. Knows better now, I expect. In the halls, he went sailing with his father. Now, at 13, he's going to Gordonston in Scotland, where Prince Philip also went. Mr. Robert Chew is the present headmaster, and Windmill Lodge House looks forward to the young prince's arrival in May. Here's a typical dormitory, Boys sleep soundly without luxury. A study such as the Prince may occupy. And the library. There's luxury in books there. Stinks, of course, are part of the curriculum. It's a scientific age. A chap who's very good at games isn't hero worshipped. At Gordonstoun, the accent is on self-reliance and service. The school's near the Moray Firth, and seamanship is one of many outward-bound ideas there. The Prince of Wales already knows a bit about that.
In 1965, the world paid homage to Winston Churchill. At the age of 90, the great man whose leadership did so much to ensure the survival of the free world had died. Representatives of 110 nations attended the state funeral. Thousands of ordinary people filed past the coffin in Westminster Hall, where it lay for 3 days and nights. Chief mourners were, of course, his widow and family, but at the heart of the ceremony was the relationship between the statesman and the royal family. He'd served the crown during the reigns of 6 monarchs.
From Westminster Hall, the coffin is borne by a bearer party from the Brigade of Guards. With the Royal Air Force escort, it will now be drawn by a Royal Naval gun crew to St. Paul's. This has been the Navy's privilege ever since the state funeral of Queen Victoria. Winston Leonard Spencer Churchill, Knight of the Garter, Order of Merit, Companion of Honor. In the first carriage, his widow and his 2 daughters. Officers of his own regiment, the Queen's Royal Irish Hussars, bear his orders and decorations. So began his last sad journey. Not since the last century has the honor of a state funeral been accorded to a commoner, but who more worthy of it than this man who, more than any other, helped to preserve this century of the common man. He it was who provided us with an image of ourselves as we would wish to be. Winston Churchill served his country and the world as a champion of democracy. Now the world joins his countrymen to pay homage at St. Paul's.
The stately farewell to one of the great statesmen of the 20th century. And it's almost time for me to say goodbye, but before I do go, here's a fascinating glimpse of one of the many weird and wonderful customs from around the world which Movietone brought to the screen. It's the festival of the Tommy Cod, and it takes place every year in Canada.
A cabin takes a ride through a small town about 120 miles from Montreal. It can't be a beach hut, it isn't beach hut weather. Perhaps it's a pavilion for midget soccer teams. We'll give you a clue. They're cutting out a slab of the St. Anne River, which freezes to a thickness of 3 feet, before placing the cabin over the hole. No, it isn't one of those, either. Below the old church, some 1,500 cabins make up a wooden town which stretches for a mile down the icebound river. Inside these cabins, dedicated folk arrange for a rendezvous with the cause of all their trouble, a fish that's seldom more than 8 inches long. This is the Tommy Cod, a member of the cod family which travels up the St. Lawrence to spawn in the St. Anne. It's the ultimate in fishing comfort. Just pull them up through the sitting room floor. You can get hundreds within a few hours. The Tommy Cod Run provides the excuse for a nice carnival with snowmobile trips and sleigh rides. Most weekends, around 25,000 visitors come here to rent cabins and join in the fun and games.
Indoor fishing, strictly for sissies if you ask me.